Britain did not collapse in 1979. There was no invasion, no civil war, no moment when the country officially stopped. On paper, everything still worked. The government remained in place. Power stations existed, food was stored, hospitals were open. And yet, movement disappeared. Trains stopped without clear explanations. Electricity failed even when fuel was available. Rubbish stayed on the streets, not because it could not be collected, but because the system could no longer coordinate itself. Nothing was technically broken. No single failure, no obvious enemy. Britain was not facing chaos. Chaos is loud. This was quieter. This was a country discovering that order does not vanish suddenly. It erodes. And the most dangerous moment was not panic, but the silent question that appeared everywhere at once. If nothing is broken, what exactly stopped working first? Britain still believed in its own reliability. Not arrogance, routine. In the 1950s and 60s, the country looked organized. Timetables held, lights stayed on, shops opened on time. A modern country shouldn't need backup plans. Yet quietly, it began to make them. Then small failures appeared. A delay that made no sense. A blackout that returned soon. A shortage blamed on weather, paperwork, a single depot. People did what Britain always does. They queued. They joked about it. They carried on. You left earlier. You kept candles. You stocked a little extra just in case. Because each incident ended. It always ended. That was the trap. When disruption is brief, it trains a nation to tolerate it. And Britain learned the wrong lesson. Not fix the system, but live around the fault. So the shift didn't start with panic. It started when inconvenience became normal. And one question began to follow every new headline. Is this still an exception or the start of a pattern? At first, the disruptions felt unrelated. Transport failed 1 week. Energy struggled the next. Deliveries slowed somewhere else. Never all at once. Never permanently. That was the pattern. Each problem arrived alone, then left. But the gaps between them grew shorter. A strike ended, another followed. A delay cleared, a new one appeared elsewhere. Nothing collapsed. Everything weakened. Systems began to depend on perfect timing. If one part slowed, another stalled. If one link failed, pressure moved down the line. People stopped asking why it happened. They started asking how long it would last. Plans became flexible. Promises became cautious. The country still functioned, but only if nothing went wrong. And slowly, Britain entered a dangerous phase. Not crisis, but expectation of disruption. When failure is expected, resilience disappears. And one thought settled quietly across the country. This is no longer a series of events. It is a condition. The shift came quietly, not with sirens, with habits. The government issued statements. Local councils improvised. Unions negotiated. Everything looked procedural, but people began to behave differently. They left home earlier, just to survive the timetable. They kept cash, not trust. They stored candles, batteries, extra food, without saying panic. Neighbors checked on neighbors. Businesses built slack into schedules. Families planned routes, backups, alternatives. Small choices became policy. Policy became routine. No one said it aloud. Britain was not afraid of disaster. It was afraid of being caught unprepared. Because once a nation starts living just in case, it has admitted something painful. Normal life is conditional. So the real question was no longer, will it happen? It was, when it happens again, what fails first? Now. By the 1970s, Britain was not short of resources. It was short of margin. Energy existed, but arrived late. Transport functioned, but only partially. Infrastructure stood, but waited for permission to move. Nothing failed completely. Everything failed just enough. Fuel sat in depots. Trains sat on tracks. Workers waited for signals that never aligned. The system required everything to work at once. When one piece slowed, the rest stalled. Authority issued instructions. Reality ignored them. The country did not break, it slowed. And that was more dangerous. Because a system that slows without stopping hides its weakness. It looks stable, until pressure builds everywhere at the same time. Britain was no longer resilient. It was balanced on timing, and timing is not control. The real shock was not a single failure. It was how failures multiplied. One delay pulled another. A missed delivery stalled a service. A strike exposed a shortage. A shortage triggered another strike. No one caused it. No one controlled it. Each part did its job. Together, they locked each other in place. There was no switch to reset the system. No authority that could pause everything and restart clean. Decisions arrived late. Information arrived incomplete. Actions arrived out of order. The country learned something uncomfortable. Complex systems do not fail loudly. They fail sideways. Pressure moved through them silently until normal operations depended on luck. And when luck becomes necessary, control has already been lost. That was the moment Britain understood the risk, not of collapse, but of a system that could no longer absorb shock. The fear did not arrive as panic. It settled. There were no riots, no mass flight, no dramatic scenes to remember. Instead, something quieter took hold. People stopped planning far ahead. They avoided certainty. They learned to expect interruption. Questions changed. Not, why is this happening? But what fails next? Cold homes were endured. Delays were accepted. Inconvenience became background noise. The danger was not suffering. It was normalization. When disruption becomes familiar, it stops demanding answers. Trust did not collapse. It thinned. Confidence did not disappear. It became conditional. Britain was still calm, still orderly, but underneath a new assumption had formed. Continuity was no longer guaranteed. And once that belief changes, every system feels fragile. Even when it is still standing. Britain did not discover weakness in 1979. It discovered a misunderstanding. Modern systems feel strong because they are complex, but complexity is not protection. Technology did not guarantee control. Efficiency did not guarantee safety. Order did not guarantee stability. The system worked, but only when nothing went wrong. And that was the truth Britain finally saw. Modern life is not resilient by default. It is maintained continuously. Remove the margin, and order becomes an illusion.